Hello, everybody. This is Jordi from Agents at Work, and today we are talking with Saqib from Langbase. Hi, Saqib.
Hey Jordi, how you going?
Where are you joining us from?
Today I'm joining you from Edmonton,
Nice.
Canada.
And you will be in San Francisco soon?
Yeah, I'm traveling soon. Bunch of conferences coming in, so.
For people who are listening to this, how it is to work on AI from a place that is not San Francisco? Because it looks like all the companies are here, but there is quite a lot of things that are happening outside. So how is that?
Yeah, I think being in San Francisco, it's entirely different thing, right? But at the same time, the talent is everywhere around the world, right? And having this whole comfort of sitting at home and working from home, it's a huge advantage, right? We always traveling to the SF, but the ability to just being productive at home is much I think useful for us.
Yeah, there is a lot also of noise if you're in the city because there are like constantly events and constantly, like new things that you need to try, and then it's hard to focus. You have been in ML for multiple years, right? Before it was cool.
Yeah, I guess I have been in ML for like past 6, 7 years now. And honestly, yeah, I started before it was cool. Actually, I did my master's in AI, and I did it from University of Alberta. I'm not sure if you have heard much about it, but it's one of the top schools to do AI research. If you're aware of AlphaGo, much of their team was working closely with the professors at University of Alberta. We recently won Turing Award for RL. The father of the RL, Rich Sutton, is the professor at University of Alberta. So lots of exciting AI stuff happens here. So I went there to do my master's in AI, and I used to do something called neurosymbolic programming. And my thesis was essentially writing programs to write programs. Looking back 7 years now, we are doing agents, generating agents, or AI writing code for us. But at that time, literally, we used to go in and explain to people it's like writing codes to generate code. So what you see, the first version, I think it came out was GitHub Copilot that used to generate the code, and at the same time, Tab 9 came out, and that was very contemporary research area back then. And I used to do research in the same area. I worked some of the search algorithms to actually improve the speed of generation of the code and whatnot, but that was very basic generation of code, and from there it evolved and here we are.
And for the people who don't have a master thesis on this, what is symbolic programming?
So it's like defining your own search space. So you come up with the symbols, you define a DSL or your own search space. For instance, it could be Python programming language or any other programming language. And then you either train a neural network, you train a policy, or you do a search through the space which satisfy a certain set of constraints. When it started early on, it was more of deterministic. So the program that you would expect, it would 100% would be correct. Obviously defined by your own criteria. But over the time it evolved because that was very limited, and we evolved into these latent spaces of programs and whatnot where it's like more of probabilistic. But you get there, it may or may not work, but just getting there is already useful, right? That's where we are even now. Like LLM generates code, it's like 90% there, but it's still useful, like because it saves so much time getting from 0 to 90. I think that's already huge.
I am sure that Dijkstra could be pretty proud of that branch of AI.
100%.
But how is it different from what LLMs do today? Like, are they using symbolic programming or?
No, I think LLMs is an entirely different architecture when it comes to it, right? Back in I think 2017 or 18, when attention is all you need, paper came out. It was mostly focused on I think for translation product of Google, right? And from there on, it evolved. I was recently listening to this talk by Jeff Dean, I think at Sequel Capital or something, and he was like, "We trained this, and we knew it's gonna go huge, and we figured it out. Like as they are getting bigger, the results are improving." So it was like one thing after other which connected, and now we have everything pretty much we are doing through LLMs, like from vision and whatnot, and even audio, right? Before that, if you go back, it would be like CNNs and whatnot just to generate the images. Just like that, if you look at symbolic programming, it was entirely different field. But now you would see, like lately I haven't been following up the latest research there, but They are using LLMs to actually improve that, right? And there is recently a new startup, I think NDA, I don't know how they pronounce it. They're attempting to solve the ARC challenge problem using program senses.
Yeah. Even back then, were you that bullish into AI, or like 7 years ago, it was like, well, yeah, this is going to be productive, but it's not going to change the world the way it's doing?
I think looking back, honestly, it was a little bit hard to envision like 7 year in the future, right? We knew it gonna eventually work. We knew we had some result, but as a researcher, mostly at least you start with the synthetic benchmarks, right? And you come up with a set of problems, and then you try to solve them. Some of them, may or may not work in the real world. And you envision someday, we're gonna get that stage where it will work, right? At the campus, lots of students were doing RL work, which was being used in robotics and whatnot. For me, it was more of exploratory because I came before my master's. I wasn't into like AI and whatnot, right? I was mostly into software engineering. So just building products, right? And that's what I liked. Solving problems, putting out things on the web because I could see it, and I liked that part a lot. For research, one of the things were, you do lots of work, but it ends up living just in a research paper, right? And most of the time it doesn't see the light of the day, right? But I think that changed with ChatGPT, right? When they put this product onto the web, it's in the hands of everybody in a familiar interface where they can just chat, right? Everybody chats. WhatsApp, Messenger, whatnot, right? And when it was a familiar interface, there was distribution through web, everything changed, right? And then from that time up until now, I think it's something I think nobody had imagined it will change things so quickly.
Were you surprised when you tried GPT for first time, or you were like, okay, yeah, I know that this is possible, so
So I think when GPT-3, I think 3 was the public release with API and whatnot, right? And before ChatGPT. Before that, there was Copilot and Tab 9. There were two of them doing it for the first time. And I remember having very similar conversations with my supervisor about, we were reading some research paper, there were papers on, code generation. And then there were paper on finding bugs, and there were papers on fixing bugs. I was like, you can generate code, you can fix bugs. That's essentially programming, right? If you can write tests to find out the bugs, the output is not as expected, you go back and you fix it, right? And then you can have a co-pilot. And then GitHub Copilot came out, and I remember going to my professor, showing him, like, we were talking about this. We knew this is gonna happen, and he was like, I think you had more of a startup mindset, and you can see things, and I think this will work out in the future for you. And then couple of years down, GPT comes out. I think by that time I had graduated. But looking at it, it was like, it works for some problems at GPT-3. And then 3.5 turbo and whatnot, and then all of a sudden things were different. You're like, I was a bit surprised, because I didn't work much on transformers, not on NLP stuff even, right? So my research field was more of search oriented, right? So Dextra and whatnot, right? And my thesis as well. So that's what I worked on mostly. And then looking at that, I was like, this is exciting. And then I did a bunch of work later on that, but mostly in terms of improving the search algorithms, right? That's where I worked on.
And during those years, was always like academia or industry, but in the research side?
For me, it was mostly academia. I used to look up mostly on the software industry side more than research positions. But what's happening in industry, I think the main distinction for me was just the idea of seeing things out there. You build a website and it's out there. That excites me, right? No matter what you do research, it would be like couple of months you're just sitting in lab trying to figure out some math and doing something and trying to run some benchmark, doing some graphs, just see okay, we are improving, we're not improving, and analyzing, okay, where we can improve. But on the other hand, when you do product, right, even if it doesn't work, it's out there, right? Okay, there's a bug you can see, and you can show it to somebody and you can explain. That's something I think is what used to excite me, and I used to just keep an eye out. And as I mentioned earlier, GitHub Copilot was, I think, one of the earliest product which was it's out there, it's working. That was, I think, a very exciting part for me.
Okay, and right now you are one of the founding engineers at Langbase. How was that transition? Like, when did that happen? And, like,
Yeah.
how they did convince you to join the company?
Yeah, so it goes way back. So I have been in touch with Ahmed, I think since my college days. So that would go back 10 years or more, right? During my college, we worked on some projects. Later on, we have been working on and off. But then he's pure web person. We were working with developers and whatnot. And then I transitioned into AI. I did my master's and continued working in there. And then all of a sudden, I think before like even this hype, the one we have currently, it wasn't like that a year or two back even, right? It was still like, okay, GPT-4 is out, 3.5 is out, and Ahmed reached out to me. He's like, AI is hot. I'm a web person. There is still like bunch of challenges. I see developers struggling with. Like just like 2 years back, asking a developer to go write prompts and find and whatnot and building a product, it was still a struggle, right? There were not bunch of frameworks. I think LangChain was the earliest one which started, and then that was also from research, and Python, everybody struggled with it, right? Because web developers, they like love JavaScript, so anything JavaScript, they would jump on it. So he reached out, he's like, this guy is hot, it's up and coming. You come from that background, I come from web background, so there are a bunch of problems that we can solve, and there is value that we can add and make it easier for the people who don't have this ML knowledge, right? To become comfortable with AI, having that knowledge available for them, because just getting started with that, like the whole notion around AI, like it's getting better, but still, right, it's there. Just to make developers comfortable with that and provide them the developer experience that they want and give them the right set of tools. That was the main idea behind Langbase, right? So just making it easier for people to build with it. They shouldn't be concerned with infra and whatnot. They should be actually just building the application, because the moat actually lies in the application layer and business layer, what you build, not like what the backend looks like, right? So that's how it started.
And to be fair, that's what also made things like companies like OpenAI grow so fast, because they are not appealing to ML engineers only. It's not like, okay, we have all this infra, now you can use it, and we just like do a markup on or something like that. They say like, no, let's give you the building blocks. So
Yeah.
if you're a normal engineer, you see what you build at ChatGPT, you can embed this into your product with a really simple API, and it's working really well for them.
Yeah, I think it again goes back to how you can reach out to users, right? There are a bunch of interesting problems they have been solving for a while now, but they were not accessible to the end user, right? Most of us, like even the general public, they consume all the technology through internet, right? Most of it, at least. So just bridging that gap, it was huge, and just empowering the web developers to build more website, more tools, more applications, like even like application developers. I think that was the toughest part, which is being solved now. And that's where like most of the product layer is nowadays, and that's where all the innovation is happening. Because models, there is like this foundation model labs, like all of them doing bunch of exciting stuff, and there are a bunch of startups solving different set of problems, and then there is consumer, right? So this is how I see this thing.
And when I met you for first time at the AI Engineering Summit or conference in New York, like last February, something that really got my attention is that your platform had many of the foundational pieces that these agents or AI applications need that they were still lacking in many other platforms. So for example, I remember that you made a bit fuss about memory.
Yeah.
How was memory integrated? Like, how did you notice that this is something like, like this is missing? Like everyone is using their own memory and asking Claude to summarize in a file. Maybe we should actually bundle it with the infrastructure itself.
Yeah, I think it was, there are a couple of factors, right? So again, I think it's this amalgam of people coming from different backgrounds, right? Like me coming from the AI background, and Haman himself coming from the web, and most of our team as well. So there is this gap, right? As a ML or AI guy, I see things very differently. I'm like, they are supposed to be like this. But somebody who has been building products or like distributing them for like 15 years, they would see it differently. They would be like, okay, why should I do this? why it is different. And this is not how we do applications in the web. They have to be distributed, they have to be packaged. Everybody is doing it, so why not just give it to them, right? And then there was this whole RAG thing going on. Everybody is doing things differently. So one of the fundamental principles that we adopted at Langbase early on was just building on primitives, right? We don't want to give you a framework, right? And we don't want to tell you how to build things, right? We want to give you the basic building blocks or elements that you can, just join together and build a huge thing, right? Any Lego blocks or just any programming language, right? If you program, what you get is in any language, if else clause, right? And then just like basic data types, there are some primitives that comes built in, and then you just join them and build your end product, right? So you don't have to be on a framework to be able to build things, and you can actually build things better if you know what is going on at the core level. So if you see that was one of the fundamental principle that we try to follow even today. And then with that, obviously, we try to make sure it's like world-class developer experience when you come and build with Langbase. These things together led us to build pipe and then memory. It was called different names early on. And Ahmed and I remember having conversation. He was like, I think we should just call it memory. I was like, memory in AI would mean entirely different thing, right? It's not like a memory, and they would be like, I mean, no, but it's easier to explain. This is what people get. It's like, agent who can do something, understand something. It's like humans, right? So you're learning a new thing, right? We go out, we try to just see things and try to reason about that. But if you don't know a thing, you need memory, you need the knowledge, which in physical world, it's either book, it's like tutorials or something. Just like that, AI, it would need that memory piece, right? To be able to just have that, to be able to read on that, reason on that, and then be able to do something. So it's like, extending the ability of a bare-bone LLM, right? So that's the basic idea of memory. And then obviously making it simpler and just like single API call, and that's all the developer experience part that came with it. But then the same thing happened, and Ahmed was right about that, is like, how traditionally an RL agent would mean entirely different thing. If you have, studied RL or, a little bit about it. RL is an entirely different thing, and agent is different thing in RL. But now if you search web, it's very rare that you would find an RL agent. It would be just like agents, like the AI agents that you and me and everybody is building, right? Just like that, the memory thing was like, all of a sudden it was like memory everywhere, it's memory. So same thing is happening there as well. And if you see the primitive approach, I think we have been doing same thing for a while, even at the AI Engineer Summit when we met. And then I think OpenAI next day gave a talk, and they were like, you should not go follow frameworks, you should build by primitives, right? So that was also, a good part of, we are on the right track, doing the right things.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, like technically you are like a really like strong team. You have built like quite a lot of stuff. So it's normal that, like the industry is catching up with your approach, because usually you do it right the first time. And then you iterate, to improve it, but you already have like a good gut sense of, well, this should be packaged, this should run like this should be abstracted. And many times when it's a really new thing, that's hard to transmit to the other side. Like if it's a new developer, like they don't know how to think in that abstraction because it's a new domain for them. So I guess that's why, like your approach look like something weird from the other ones at the beginning, and then the more you use it, just like, wait a second, like this is actually how it should be. Like Ahmad, it's also like a superstar on web. It's not like he was a small web developer working in an agency doing, like a web flow for pages for a few landings or something. And it shows in the product and in the approach itself. When you said that you give the people primitives and you don't want to give them a framework, but like let them build their stuff. How do they build the stuff? Like it's code, like it's a package, like a React thing that they import and then they run it in their own Amazon Web Service, or they have to deploy it in your platform? How does the product look like at the beginning?
Yeah, so that's very interesting question, and we have been getting lots of those questions early on, which led us to now build Chai. I would come to that later, but it's a segue to that as well. When people would come to us, they're like, okay, you're doing primitives, as you said early on, right? You were doing primitives. Everybody was trying to do something differently, right? And nobody knew what was the right way. For us, it was, if it were us building something, what would we like, right? So, and then the approach was going to first principle. What do you get in a language? And looking back, I think AI is nothing more than a piece of your code, a component of your code, which is just not deterministic, right? That's all it is. You build software the way you used to build. Your auth is same, right? And your databases are same. It's just like that one block that of AI, the agentic part that you use, it's non-deterministic, right? So that's how it began. And then using those primitives, you would write a code or a build a agent or multi-agent just like you would code, right? So it's like, asking, okay, there are a bunch of functions. How do you join them together to do a bigger task? How do you do that in programming, right? You would write one function. Okay, imagine it's a memory, right? It's abstracted out for you. You just pass it params and then you use it. So it would be literally like bunch of calls, right, that you would be doing. And we did infra for that, obviously, because AI, just like learning to use AI and understanding its capabilities and limitations is different from traditional software engineering. Just similar to that, deploying and scaling is different from traditional base, right? So we built that part as well, and we built in a serverless way, so you don't have to, go in and do things and wait for it to, get online and do things. You can just build on the go. So that's how things came together, and you can pretty much build it in any code base. You're in your IDE of whatever you like, your language you like, because it's all on API. You can just use those pieces together and you can have an agent up and running. There are a bunch of docs that we publish around that, education that we had to do just to tell people, they don't have to be more complicated than your traditional code base, right? So it's just like one piece of code in your code, nothing has changed, just that is agentic and it can do things that you were not able to do before, right? For instance, just like having a simple sentiment analysis tool, right? You don't need a neural network or something, to plug in, run a Python code, a neural network running on a GPU, writing API and whatnot. It would be just like a simple API call, right? And you just send a call, you get a sentiment. But before that, imagine just like 4 years back, if you have to show sentiment, what do you do? So those things have changed. This is literally the simplest explanation for me to explain what you do with agentic apps and whatnot, right? And it can take actions that were not possible to take programmatically. For instance, just like another interesting example is parsing a web page, right? Instead of doing bunch of searches and extracting out content, just feed that content. LLM would do that for you, right? And you don't want all the complicated mess. All of that piece is now shrink to just like one API call, right? And then you need set of tools to go with it, memory and whatnot, logging, and we provide you that so you can just keep building the applications you used to do, just that you can introduce the agentic features in it, and then you can compose them as you want. You can, do all the traditional programming stuff with that.
I really liked what you said about programming with AI. It should be the same as programming without AI, but sometimes it's probabilistic.
Yeah.
And I am pretty used to that because even in 2010 when I started programming, everything was probabilistic. Like my code sometimes works and sometimes does not. And I don't know exactly why. So I am pretty well suited for that new world that it's coming. You mentioned that AI agents are different what people say today that they are versus what they're back in reinforcement learning or like AI in the 80s. What do you think that an AI agent is nowadays?
Oh, I think there are a bunch of applications and there are a bunch of definitions. For me, I think it's just like it's easier to explain in terms of examples, but it's harder to just put a definition on top of it, right? It's more of something that can consume bunch of unstructured stuff and give you a very sophisticated output, right? And that's something you couldn't do with just piece of code. That's, I think, the easiest way to explain it. And then the example would be the same, like parsing a web page, or just like, getting a user feedback. Comments have been there on products forever, right? And just getting the sentiment, you couldn't do it, right? And then think of it, a small piece of brain, right, which can reason about some things, but you need to be aware what things they are, right? And then you can do the reasoning on it, and then you can get the output on top of it.
Nice. And then now we can talk about Chai. Like, what did you deploy the other day? Or what would you release that
Yeah.
set Twitter on fire?
No, that's on fire. Sport is on fire as well. And bugs list too. Good problems to have. So as I was telling you, the primitives were there, everything was there, but still I think for many developers and no coders, it's exciting. There is lots of FOMO as well. People want to build, but they don't know how to build and get started with. Many no coders want to jump on top of it. All those primitives were there, right? But people still have to connect them. Right. So it started more of as an internal project where it was an internal discovery. What if we could train our own AI on our own context and make it build AI agents using Langbase, right? All the APIs are there, infra is there. We have bunch of data and learnings from our customers building on top of us. Why not, just take that and let AI use Langbase and build agents for you, right? For instance, let's say you want to build a customer support chatbot or just a sentiment analysis tool, right? You will go in and you will be like, okay, I need to call LLM, I need to put API keys, I need to attach a memory, upload some stuff, connect a web search tool and this tool and that, right? Still, it's like, we know it used to be like a day job, but with LLM, it's like, half an hour and an hour of work. But with all the vibe coding thing, people even don't want to do that, right? They would like, if it's done for me, I'd be happy. So like, why not try it out, right? And then we started as an internal project, we put it in staging, we gave it like, access to our staging and let it build things. And use the agents internally and see how it performs, right? And we were pretty surprised on lots of stuff and use cases that it was able to solve, because earlier customers would come and they're like, hey, I want to build this. Do you know how can I build this? Or if it's possible to build on Langbase, we would be like, this is guide, this is the guide, this is the documentation. Why not you go and try out? Now what we started doing internally was, just copy paste that and let it build, right? So that was very exciting part, where we saw like agents automatically being built and deployed on Langbase, and we could just use that, and the exciting patterns that emerged out of it, how AI itself was, piecing together different primitives to actually build a bigger agent. That was really exciting for us. We started doing POCs based on that, because now it was like, hey, it's not like, it's gonna take us a couple of hours or figure out something. We were just chatting internally. We were like, okay, build this, do this, and then all of a sudden it could build agent. And now it took eventually the shape of Chai. It's like an AI agent which actually builds AI agents for you, right? So, and it goes back to taking right decisions early on and building on primitives, right? Where it knows what each primitive does, and then it has this ability to, join them together. Had it been a framework or other complexities, lots of abstraction layers, it wouldn't have been able to, I think, join them as well as it can do right now. That's what Chai is, and we launched it 2 weeks back, almost more than 2 weeks now, and within 2 weeks we're like 60k agents up and live, deployed, they are running. It generates the agent code for you, and then it will generate the UI for you, and still it will also give you an API for that, right? And it will also generate the whole flow diagram, so you can go in and understand, okay, how the flow is, what the code looks like. And if you want to take in, copy that and go and change it. Super exciting, right? Other than instead of, just like having just UI or something out there, you actually see the code which is building that whole thing. So if you want to go, all the way down, you can go. But if you just want to, wipe code your agent, have it running and using it, you get all of it. So it's like, the whole cycle.
So the beginning, it's just a chat interface. You can go now to chai.new.
Yeah.
Right? You log in, and then you have a chat that says something like, what do you want to build today?
Yeah.
And it's like a genie. You just say like, well, what I would like is an agent that is able to tell me if the user is happy or mad. based
Honestly,
on their stuff. And then that agent, like that piece of infrastructure that you build, it's built on top of the Langbase platform.
yeah,
It's like, okay, so I know how to use all these primitives. Let me build for you the code that uses this. This is actually something that I think that most companies are sleeping on. That it's like they are saying like, oh, let's expose tools so external agents can use us.
yeah,
But actually, many times, like the one that knows how to use the tools best is the internal company. So they should build an agent on top that's just
yeah.
like, well, ask me. And for me, it was always weird when they said like, oh no, the GitHub API has like, I don't know, more than 300 methods and it's too much. It's like, well, I don't want the full GitHub API. I want to tell an agent, listen, all my code and like GitHub should be the one building that agent because they have more data than anyone. So you then build that, you put it out there, people start using it. What kind of things are they building?
They're pretty much building everything. Lots of exciting stuff from sales agents to because it also has access to memory, right? So the memory is there. You can build a sport agent in literally like 1 minute or less than that. So they are building that. They are building bots for Twitter threads. They are going in and doing end to end bunch of agents and putting them together because it's production ready right from the beginning, right? Deployed on the serverless infra. So they are building something like, hey, take in my receipt, do the analysis on this thing, and then go in and populate this field. I just want to go in and see what they are building. From that to just like basic agents doing daily stuff, just writing emails, like couple of steps, taking in the email, analyzing it and whatnot, and writing a response for you, and then you can put in your own samples in the memory, and then it can learn from that, okay, this is the tone that I want for the email to be. So pretty much everything that is possible on Langbase, and even more interesting use cases that we haven't seen, honestly, that are coming out. And it's pretty exciting to see. One of the first, I think, AI out there building AI agents that are production ready. Super exciting. And I also kind of agree one of the point that you highlighted, right? Some of the time it's the internal team who knows better about their product, right? And they are in the best position to actually build those agents for others to, hey, come in and use our tool, and you don't need to know the 300 methods on our API, right? And I think that's one of the things which gonna get copied super soon, and we will see more and more companies doing the similar stuff and enabling their users to build more quickly using Langbase. Oh, sorry, not Langbase. I mean, they can, but like for their products as well. So that's where it's headed.
And something that I would like to stress that you just like go over it because you are used to it.
Yeah.
But it's this idea that it's production ready. So you
Yeah.
ask for something to happen, and usually, like I can do that in Cursor, or I can do that in GPT. Like I can go to chatgpt.com and say, like, listen, I would like to have this thing in Python, and it's going to write me some code.
Yeah.
However, what do I do with that? Developers say it's really easy. You just copy it in a file, then you go to Amazon Web Service, create an account there, and then you deploy it in an EC2, or you package it in a Lambda. You just get your credentials, and then you put them in the .config, and it's like, well, what is going on here? And you told me that the GPT thing was done almost, so why do I have to do all this?
100%.
With Chai, it's actually not like that. Like you just say something, the code gets written. Does it get auto-deploy in Chai's infrastructure?
Yeah.
But how can people from the outside access it?
So number one, from the day one, there is an API. So every agent which gets built on Chai, there is an API, right? And you really don't have to do all of the stuff that you just mentioned, right? So that was one of the problem that we figured out and we learned from our customer. They're like, okay, there are a bunch of exciting stuff that I can build with Langbase, but now I need a bunch of people to do that. And like, okay, you don't have to do that anymore, right? And then you get a production ready API based on those same primitives, and you can just start using it. There's an UI you can share, and people can start interacting with your agent, right? And it really saves you a bunch of that time and figuring out all the DevOps stuff. And honestly, let me tell you, it's not easy, right? just setting the whole thing up, not just like lambdas and whatnot, and just scaling it, it's a headache, right? And then having your engineers to constantly monitor it. On the other hand, just like vibe coding a thing which is production ready, and you don't even have to not just think about deploying it, you don't even have to think about, scaling it, right? Because it's serverless and it's scaled for you, it's taken care of you. You can literally go in and put it in production, it's gonna work. So you don't have to worry about it. And the other interesting thing is something that we also saw in some of our feedback was the thing that you mentioned. And again, you connected it well with the point that, since I'm used to it and it's very easy for me to say, you can put in production. All of those tools are out there, right? Bunch of them to vibe code pretty much everything. But then taking that to production, it's entirely different thing. And the amount of time that you have to spend on that, it's huge, still huge, right? And then since it's not again primitive first approach, because Langbase itself has solved a bunch of problems, and Chai is learning based on those contexts, right? And then it can use the code which is production ready, right? And then it will build the code which is production ready. So both of those things are taken care for you, right? You're not, for instance, memory, something like memory itself, you have to go in and figure out which embedding model to use, which vector store to use, where to put my data, right? And then if I want to use something else, how do I do that? It's itself, it can take a lot of time, but having that primitive available to you and which is just plug in and then having an end product, I think that's massive.
Yeah, it's pretty huge. Like just when you said like the primitive memory is not one thing. It's
Exactly.
like, like what is this? Is this a JSON? And then there are tables behind it. It's like, oh, don't worry. I will just tell you how it behaves. And for you, it's an API call. The same way that for inference, they don't tell me like, well, but what data centers are out there? How is it routed? Is it this? It's like, don't worry. You want inference? We give you inference. Like, you give us text, we give the output to you. And you don't have to care about what it's there. It's really good that someone else is taking care of that complexity because it's something that is horizontal.
Yeah.
Everyone would have to learn. And instead you just say like, well, I will take care of this layer. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I think the thing with that is also with more and more advancement in AI and particularly the LLM layer, the focus and the mode is shifting more towards your application or the business layer, right? What you build with AI is way important than how you build it, right? So given having that in mind also sets lots of things clear in our roadmap and whatnot. Like, if somebody wants to build something, they shouldn't have to do this. Having this piece available in the form of API would save them a lot of time, and they can just, use an API, have it up and running, just iterate on the business layer.
In the last 18 months, it has been like the biggest transition for me from like full engineer to more like a CEO and like a product person. And how I usually tell people is that now is the best moment to own the problem. So engineers, like we like to say like, well, so this is how it's solved, but technology is advancing so fast that it doesn't make sense to say like, okay, so for the next 18 months, this is how we're going to solve it. It's like, no, you just want to own the problem. So for example, here is like having production ready apps. So you need the primitives and then you need to deploy it. So you own that. And then you say like, we're going to take care of memory. And you don't have to say like, no, this is only for vector databases. It's like, well, we don't know. Like maybe in the future we want to do some other kind of pre-processing of text. Yeah. Or there is a new kind of embeddings that we want to use. And then you want to give that flexibility and just tell people like, listen, this is going to change. You don't want to own this. We can do it for you so you can focus on higher levels. Yeah. Now when people are using Chai, how long is like they are using it? Like if I have an idea of an app, how many iterations do I need to do? Like it's something that I can have in half an hour. I have to be like 1 week for having it production ready, or how does that work?
There is very timeline in terms of it really depends on your background, right? And your understanding of what AI is capable of doing, what can be packaged into an app simply to get it up and running. So we see a very different set of users. We have been lately observing them, and there is very different set of users. Some users, they know and they pick it up very quickly what we can do, what is capable of doing. And we see them, like there is one customer top of my head that I remember, they have like a huge subscription plan, and then they have built, I think, 40 to 60 small agents, and they have really figured out what it can do And it's sometimes very exciting to see what they are building, and they are like literally sometimes one-shotting it. Sometimes error comes in, they just give it back and it fixes it. For that person, it has been on average like 4 or 5 messages, and then the agent is ready and they're using it. They have some their own pipeline, they're just like putting it in production and they're using it. On the other hand, for some users who are like not used to building with AI, or some know, okay, there is AI and there is something that can build an agent for me, they would just try to push it boundaries, right? And then they wouldn't understand the limitation, and then they would be struggling. And we really try to reach out to them very quickly, and then walk them through and also understand their pain of like, why do you think it should be doing this, right? And then where this whole set of ideas come from that you're trying to build this thing here, right? And then we are iterating on top of that to make sure like it's easier for users to understand the limitations and build something on top of Chai. And then that was one customer that I gave example of you, and then there is nothing I have seen which has gone to a week. Usually we have seen customers just doing one set of chat, just like you would do with GPT or something, like couple of messages and it's done, something like that. A new pattern that we have seen is people are just doing bunch of exciting stuff. They know it's 90% there. They take it, they know, okay, this is something that's not possible here, but then there is code, right? And it's not like many drag and drop tools. There is code, so they can just take it from there and then they put it in their own code and then join it together and they have something up and running. For me personally, I think most of the time I struggle from this syndrome where I know, okay, what it's capable of doing, and then I'll go in, okay, hey, do this, and then most of the time it's gonna one-shot it. Sometimes it's gonna give error, and then I'm just trying to understand why those errors are occurring, and then what's going on in there, and then just learning from it as well. And that's, I think, one of the other side of Chai is like it's also helping us to understand the limitations and what it is capable of building and what's not, and how we can take this feedback from users what they're trying to build, and then introduce that in and grow both the infra and the Chai layer itself.
Usually for what's capable to build or not, many people like desestimate it because they say like, well, this is really like dated information. Like you are one model away of like the new release of ChatGPT 404 Max high in the way that they are doing it, and then it's gonna be able.
Some of those models are really high.
Yeah, but it's true that it's dated information, but it's extremely, extremely useful in the moment. So if you want to be productive today, you need to do it, because that's like saying like, I don't want the iPhone 15 because they're already working on the 16. Yeah. And you're like, yeah, but at some point you need to have an iPhone today.
Yeah.
Because if not, you will keep postponing. Like since the 90s, I'm not going to buy a personal computer because every year, like next year is going to be better. It's like, yeah, but at some point you need to say like, well, I want to do what is possible today, even if in 1 year I need to switch it. And something that I also have questions about is this idea of production ready. When I hear production and things like APIs or servers out there, something that I always get hard is with versioning. Here, people can version their agent and they are able to update it, or right now it's more about you create one agent for a specific task, you're done.
So they are all versioned. So every agent that you would create within a Chai gets version. So as soon as you start typing and build something, you will see on top it's getting a new version. So you can just roll back and then you can just deploy a particular version and you will have that version up and running. Another interesting thing is, since there is code, right, and it's not hard to version the code, so you can have that built into. And again, going back, if you have used pipe on Langbase, they have versioning built in to them by default, right? So that is already there. So anything that you're gonna do is gonna get versioned. So you will have up and latest version deployed. Soon we will also have this ability to, you can still go back and deploy an older version, but it will be just the version that will be deployed available on the API. But you're also soon gonna have the support for API versioning, like multiple versions live online at the same time. But even today you can do it. Honestly, there's an option to fork. So if you're at a certain place, just fork it, create another copy. So that's there, right? And if you really care a lot about it and you want to do it in a certain way, there is code available. So you can take it there into your code base and start versioning.
You don't know how happy it makes me to listen these things because you're clearly like good engineers that are taking like everything that we learned about engineering in the last 25 years and
Yeah.
say, okay, there is this new thing, but we don't need to start from scratch. Like whatever we can adapt and work before, and it's still a problem with this new paradigm, let's keep it. And it's something that I really, really like. I know that, for example, Ahmad was also really into protocols. So he's someone who, like has thought a lot about this kind of things.
Yeah.
But you can see when someone is new
Yeah.
in the, like in the weeds, or someone has already done it
100%.
many, many times. And even if it's a new problem, they are like, okay, let me just pattern match.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think
Excellent.
that's the part of the developer focus thing, right? That we try to make sure that for developers it's easier to build, right? And that's why you for now you don't see anything on Langbase or Chai that is drag and drop. As developers, we really want the code. We really want to see how it is happening. We don't just want another DSL messing up the code and just giving up something, on the front which is just drag and drop and connected. So with code comes versioning, right? You want to go back. You don't just want to stick to one thing.
Excellent. And after all this, so chai.new gives me the possibility of creating the agent, versioning it. It gives me a UI for the agent. It gives
Yeah.
me like an API for the agent. It gives me the infrastructure where it's running already, like for redeploying and everything.
Yeah.
What about documentation? It gives
Yeah.
me the possibility of document stuff for my users.
Yeah. So in the chat, you would see the agent itself would explain how you can use it, what limitations are, what's going on inside it, and there is like flow as well that I mentioned earlier. On the top right section, there is something called flow. You go in there, and then you will see the whole diagram. Okay, your user query comes in here. It goes here, it goes into memory and fetches something. It goes in and calls, let's say, Claude 3.7 and comes in. It does FLs and then goes into different parts. So that diagram itself, architecture diagram, is there. It's built into it. So you can literally just copy paste and just readme.md or something, right? One of the things that we are also working on apart from that is readme.md. So currently you see the UI file, there is like agent.ts. Soon you will see like readme.md as well. So that will have parts of the chat and all the flow and everything in there as well. So if you wanna just, no, I want it my traditional way. This is how developer do it. So okay, you get the MD file as well. So that's gonna be there as well. But still, it's like the architecture diagram is there for you even now, and basic instructions are in the chat that you can take and just start. You can literally even ask it, hey, just write documentation for me as well. It's gonna give
makes
you
sense.
that. You can just
Okay.
copy paste that and put it in MD.
And it's exposed by default through the web. It's
Yeah.
exposed through API.
Yeah.
And what about MCP?
Yeah, MCP is something that I am working on with one of my colleagues. We are running the tests internally. We have something up and running already, just finishing some touches and working on the last piece, which is developer experience. Because there is MCP, there is education of MCP, and there is developer experience of MCP, right? All these parts need to be figured out when we put it into Chai or in Langbase, right? Just putting those pieces together, like, how we can provide in the most basic and simplest way, honestly. Not the best way, not the sound, just like the basic primitive approach, like how we're gonna provide MCP so people can create their MCPs, deploy their MCPs, use their MCPs, everything. Everything is in there. It's something that I am working on closely. It should be out soon, so that's on me how soon I put it out. But soon you'll be able to do bunch of exciting stuff, not just be able to connect it. There's gonna be also client for MCP, so you can just connect it. There's gonna be ability to create your own servers because those all things comes together. There is MCP server I want to connect, and there's MCP server I want to create, right? And again, all of those things either we can say, hey, go there, do this, and come back. Or, okay, wait a minute, we can do it for you, right? And you're like, okay. So just those parts of developer experience, we are working on that, figuring those out and putting out documentation and whatnot, just to have it out to the world. But yeah, it's something it's being actively worked on.
I will sleep better tonight knowing that you are into it. So, like you're working on it.
Yeah, no. That's something I'm working closely. It's on the roadmap. Again, people want it, we need to give it to them. So it's need of the hour as well. So yeah, it will be out soon. It'll soon have support for MCPs on Langbase and Chai. So you can connect your favorite MCPs.
Excellent, Saqib. And talking more broadly now, like I usually finish with a couple of questions. The first one is, what could you like to see in the next 6 to 9 months? Like what kind of things are not people doing today that you think that they are able to and they are sleeping on? And you say, well, I hope like in 9 months, like people already realize that, yeah, this is an opportunity.
Yeah, I think a couple of things that I see is something that Chai just started. Just building copilots on your own products, like building agents that are production ready. I think we're gonna see it more and more, and people have been sleeping on it for a while. For us, it has been trial and error, and just doing internal discovery and taking it to production. But I think we're gonna see it more and more in the coming months, and people will be literally vibe coding agents on every company's product, right? Instead of learning their APIs and whatnot. With MCPs, they are doing it to some extent, but soon they'll be doing on their own product, and because they really understand it very well, right? And they do not even have to go and do an extra step, right? And be able to expose some parts and patterns using their co-pilots that are not out there or not available for the people to understand or start building with, right? For instance, you might have APIs and whatnot, but that might not be what you're trying to build is not the best way to build using that product, right? And some things like that, those patterns are the best practices. You can teach your co-pilot, or you can teach your agent builder to have those out and be able to build and have things production ready. That's one thing I think I'm super excited about, and it's gonna be happening more and more in the coming months. Another thing that I would like to see more would be more agentic coding, right? Just YOLO mode. So be able to trust AI, so it becomes more stable to the extent that where I'm like it will take care of itself. It will self-heal and whatnot, and you like come back and you're like, okay, it's ready. Those are the two things that I'm super excited about. But I think they're gonna be more and more development towards the omni model, or like a multi-modal things. That's something we're gonna see, I think, more and more in the coming days as well. With respect to text, we have been seeing bunch of advancements. GPT-4o with image generation is great, but I think it's a suit to follow. So the others gonna just jump onto it, and we're gonna see some more exciting stuff.
For the second one, I have really good news because OpenAI just released Codex.
Yeah.
Not Codex the CLI, not Codex the model, but Codex the agent platform.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the CLI was out earlier, right? They just built the cloud version of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But well, they actually did like a UI. Like they are really bad at namings. Like today, I was telling Sama Alman that like I was tweeting, like it's not I have contact with him or anything. But this idea of I don't know who's putting the names, but something needs to change that. Like whoever is choosing the names is not doing a great job. And here the Codex one, it's actually different from their CLI. And even if it's using the same model behind, they have this idea of we want to own the problem. This is going to be a new platform. There's going to be a UI. You just tell us the code that we need to work on. And then you have a chat and you have tasks. The tasks get resolved in behind. You are able to see the changes and then you approve them or not. And it all happens in our infrastructure.
Okay, so where does the code live? So you have to connect your GitHub, or
Yeah,
it's like
I
upload
think
the
that
code base.
you need to connect it somehow. I guess that they do a Git clone and then they work on it, but it's
So you
happening
give your
already.
whole code base to them, and you're like, take it in your infra and make the changes for me. That's how it is.
Yeah, they are going to pull the code. It's like buying Windstorm is not enough. We also need you to give us our code.
Okay, the whole code just upload it there, right?
Yeah,
Okay, funny.
exactly.
Okay, funny thing. The earliest model that GitHub was using, I think it was with the collaboration of OpenAI or not, I'm not sure that part, but that was also called Codex. The first GitHub Copilot thing when it came out, I think 2020 something it came out, right? That was also on the Codex. It's good to see they're still carrying that name, into their CLI and now into their product as well.
It's a really good name, and now that with AI, there is so many new things that are good that we don't have enough good names, so we are reusing them. We say like, yeah, the last time that we utilized it was a few months ago, but this is a good name. Let's use it for this new thing.
Yeah.
And I actually like to do also the opposite kind of question, that it's like, what kind of things do you see people doing today that you would like them to stop doing?
That's an interesting one. I think it would be bullying the AI agent name, just putting that onto literally everything, anything, or just an LLM call. I think it's enough. Like, we should come out of that stage now. Things are maturing up now. You need to, educate a little bit and stop doing that and stop doing those threads on Twitter, 10 things I learned going through my this and whatnot. I think those things now need to stop. It's 2025 already, and you gotta put a stop on that.
I agree. So let's come back in 6 to 9 months, and I hope like you are right with the pro and cons of what's gonna happen. Perfect,
Yeah.
Saqib. So thank you very much for your time. I enjoyed a lot this conversation, and I can't wait, go back now to Chai and start like coding my next agent.
Sure. Excited to see what you build with Chai. And thank you so much for having me. It was nice chatting with you, Jordi, as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Saqib. Talk to you
Thanks
soon.
so much.
Bye.